Hey, welcome. So think about making a huge decision, like buying a house. You wouldn't just hand over the money without looking, right? Of course not. You'd get an inspection, check out the foundation, make sure you're not buying a money pit. You look before you leap. Well, in business and tech, there's a formal way to do just that, and it's called a feasibility study. Today, we're going to break down exactly how it works.
So let's get right to it. The business world is a graveyard for amazing-sounding projects that ended up being total disasters. Ideas that looked incredible on paper, but just completely fell apart in the real world, costing companies millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. So the big question is, how do smart companies avoid these massive failures? How do they figure out which ideas are pure gold and which ones are just black holes for cash?
Well, this is how. They use a feasibility study. To put it simply, it's a deep dive investigation to see if a project is even possible or, feasible. It's the grown-up version of asking, can we really do this? Should we do this? And if so, how? And the most important part, this all happens before any real money gets spent. It's the ultimate reality check.
Okay, let's jump into our first section here, how to avoid these super costly mistakes. At its heart, a feasibility study is basically your shield. It's a shield against bad investments and wasted time. It forces everyone to pump the brakes on the excitement for a second and take a really honest, objective look at what an idea's true potential is and, just as importantly, what its hidden dangers are.
And what's really cool is that any feasibility study, no matter how big or complicated, really just boils down to answering three core questions. First, is this actually a better way of doing things? For real? Second, what's the bottom line here? Are we going to save more than we spend? And third, based on everything we've found, what's the call? Is it a go or is it a no-go?
Now, to answer those big questions, you can't just look at a project from one angle. That's just not going to cut it. You need the full picture, a 360-degree view. And that's why any good study looks at a project through three different but equally important lenses.
First up, we've got the one everybody thinks of right away, economic feasibility. This is your classic cost-benefit analysis. Do the numbers make sense? Will this project make or save us enough money to justify the cost of doing it? It's all about the dollars and cents. And honestly, if the numbers don't add up here, a lot of projects just die on the vine. And that's that.
Okay, next lens, technical feasibility. This is where you ask, that's a great idea, but can we actually build it? Do we have the hardware, the software, the brainpower on our team to pull this off? I mean, an idea could promise a billion-dollar return, but if the tech to make it a reality doesn't exist yet, well then, it's not a project, it's a science fiction story.
And that brings us to our third, and maybe the most forgotten, lens, behavioral feasibility. This is all about the human element. You could build the most powerful, cost-effective, technically brilliant system in the entire world, but if the people who are supposed to use it every day hate it, or find it confusing, or just plain refuse to use it, then it's a failure. You have to ask, how much effort is it going to take to get people on board? Will they actually use this thing?
All right, so we know we've got to look at a project's money, its tech, and its people. But how does that all come together? Let's walk through the actual process and see how a team gets from a bunch of ideas to one really smart choice.
The whole thing can really be broken down into four pretty straightforward steps. First, you get the right people in the room. You need the tech experts for sure, but you absolutely need the actual users who live the problem every day. Then that team just brainstorms all the possible solutions, all the different ways you could tackle the problem. Step 3 is the real heart of it. You evaluate every single one of those options and score them. And finally, you just pick the one with the highest score. Simple as that.
And this is so important because it gets to the real goal of all of this. It's not about picking the biggest or the fanciest system. It's not about the coolest new technology. The best, most successful projects are the ones that actually meet the user's needs and make their lives easier. It all comes back to that human element, that behavioral feasibility we just talked about.
Now, when we talk about that evaluate and score step, it's a little more sophisticated than just a pros and cons list. See, to make a truly objective decision, the team has to decide what actually matters most. Not all factors are created equal. Is cost the number one absolute deal breaker? Or is it more important that the new system is super easy to learn? This is called weighting your criteria.
Let's look at a quick example. So in this scenario, the team decided that cost effectiveness is the top priority. They gave it a weight of 5, the max. But ease of use is also really important, so it gets a 4. Now let's look at our two options.
Candidate B is a little cheaper. It scores a 4 on cost. But look over at candidate A. It is way easier to use. It gets a perfect 5. And because the team weighted ease of use so heavily, that high rating makes a huge difference. You just multiply the weight by the rating to get the score for each line. And when you add it all up, look at that, candidate A comes out on top, 47 to 43. This is how you take what could be a messy argument and turn it into a clear, data-driven choice.
So after all that work, the brainstorming, the scoring, the debating, it all comes together in one final, really important document. That's the feasibility report, and it's what goes up to management for the final decision.
And this isn't just some quick email. A proper report has a clear structure so that anyone can understand it. It'll start with a cover letter and a quick overview of what the project is. Then it dives into the nitty-gritty, the detailed findings, the financial breakdown, and of course, the final recommendation. All the raw numbers and charts, they get tucked into the appendix at the back for anyone who wants to double-check the math.
This quote just nails the challenge of writing one of these things. The report has to do 2 jobs at once. It has to be simple and clear enough for a busy executive to read it and get the main point in 5 minutes. But at the same time, it has to have enough technical detail for the engineering team who will have to actually build the thing if it gets a green light. It's a real balancing act.
So at the end of the day, what's the big takeaway here? A feasibility study isn't just a report you have to write or a box you have to check. It's a way of thinking. It's a disciplined process that de-risks big decisions and ultimately prevents those massive, multi-million-dollar failures we started with. It's how you turn a wild idea into a smart plan.
And that kind of leaves us with one last question to think about. Whether it's a huge new project at your job, a business idea you've been kicking around, or even a personal goal, what's the big idea in your world that could probably use a good, honest feasibility test before you leap? Thanks so much for tuning in.